So here's the issue. When someone is navigating authority, visibility, and progression in a profession, they can feel hierarchical and high pressure. Telling them to be more confident quietly suggests that the problem is theirs and not with the system. It individualizes what is often cultural and personalizes what is often structural. So today we're talking about confidence, about what actually builds it, what undermines it, and how we can create the conditions where people don't have to fake it to survive. And before we begin, there's a few housekeeping points. We're recording the session, as mentioned. I'm keeping all the microphones on mute, but the chat and the Q&A is open, and we are going to be monitoring it throughout the session. So if you have any questions for the panelists or any questions in general, please pop them in there, and we'll go through the Q&A at the end. And this is a respectful place. I am nervous to speak. Everyone will be nervous to speak. So let's challenge ideas and not people. And with that, I'm delighted to hand over to our chair, Rachel Birchmore, who will introduce and lead today's discussion. Rachel.
Brilliant. Thanks, Taryn. That's a great introduction to a really crucial topic. And it's really exciting and quite overwhelming to have so many people here. So I'm just going to pretend there are the 4 people that I can actually see on the screen for now. So I'm Rachel Birchmore. I'm a leadership coach. And so I work with architects and engineers and others across the built environment to become more effective and indeed more confident leaders. So working with both aspiring leaders and existing leaders, one-to-one, and within leadership development programs at Step Up. You can find me on LinkedIn, so please do come and connect over there. I'm really happy to be here. As I say, it's a really important topic. So thank you firstly to Taryn and to Eleni and the rest of the Women in Architecture team for the invitation to chair. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. We've got such a great panel, which I'll come on to in a minute. And Taryn mentioned how often this has come up on the mentoring forums, I understand. I can second that and say that it comes up within coaching rooms as well, and frequently within briefs that I receive for whole cohorts or for individuals when coaching. And it's equally frustrated me that people will just give that feedback to themselves and to others, that they just need to be more confident. I mean, what on earth does that mean? And we're going to unpick that today, and that's great. And generally, it would be good if there was more specific feedback, or if there was some kind of conversation that got into the how somebody might do that. And Taryn's quite right that it does imply that the responsibility sits with the individual and not with the system or the leader or the environment and culture that the person's sitting within. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands because we've got such a big audience here, but if I did, I wouldn't mind betting that a huge proportion of this audience would put their hand up if I asked, have you ever had or given that piece of feedback that you just need to be more confident? And hopefully we can kind of stamp it out and come up with something much more helpful. So confidence can't just be demanded of ourselves or of others. It's built over time through individual stretches and with support, with clarity and with sponsorship. And that makes it, within this mentoring programme, crucial both for mentees and mentors, because confidence can't be built alone. So hopefully, as I say, we'll get to something more helpful today. A little bit about the format. We've got an amazing panel. I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves properly as they come to speak. But in brief, we have Sabrina Claw, we have Sarah Beth Riley, we have Oliver Lowry, and we have Tricia Padden. And each of our panelists will respond to, they've each got a different prompt or provocation. So we'll get 4 quite different perspectives, and each will speak for 3 or 4 minutes. Then we'll come to more of a discussion. We'll be using the chat. So please get your, Taryn, are we using the chat or the Q&A thing, the chat?
Yeah, we'll be using the chat.
Yeah, okay. So get your questions or comments into the chat, and that'll be monitored as we go. And it would be great at the end if everybody left with something that they're actually going to do differently as an outcome of the discussion. So try and spot the thing that you think you might do differently to either build your own or somebody else's confidence. Right, enough for me. Sabrina, we're coming to you first, and your provocation. So what do mentors and leaders often mistake as a lack of confidence in practice?
Hello, everybody. Well, I'll introduce myself, Rachel, for a second. Yeah, before Sabrina Clore, I am a CEO of 10 Design. 10 Design is an international global business of around 400 people around the world. And I'm also the chair of Women in Architecture, which I joined this post, I think, around a year ago. So working very closely with the mentoring team every day. Thank you, Rachel. I think from my perspective, one of the biggest mistakes that we make in practice is assuming that confidence is something that we should see, rather than something that we should enable. And I like to start from there, right? I think in reality, what we often label as lack of confidence has very little to do with capability, with ambition, or with even like self-belief. I think it's all about the context and the space that we create to allow that. In architecture practice, we constantly tend to reward the people who speak first, the people who speak the loudest, or the people who appear much more certain, right, in a room full of people around the table. But I think it's important to distinguish between visibility and capability. So they are 2 very, very different things. So some of the most capable architects that I've worked with were quieter or more reflective or cautious with their words. Especially in environments where mistakes feel costly, right? And when you are not allowed to make mistakes. And I think when we as leaders interpret that insecurity, we risk highlighting talent or simply, people that operate differently. We don't cater for the different ways that people operate. So, and also I think importantly, we forget that how destabilizing transitions are for people. Throughout our career, we go through lots of different things, right? Stepping into new roles all the time, leading a bigger team, or returning from a career break, or moving offices or countries. All of these things can really temporarily strip away confidence as we move on and as we move forward, even to very experienced people. I have that all the time. Every time I move out of my comfort zone, all of a sudden my confidence drops, right? Because you're doing something that you weren't doing before. I think so we are in the mentoring program, and so for putting into context, I think for mentors, to me, the question shouldn't be about why aren't we confident or aren't people confident. The question should be different. I think the question should be, what are the conditions that would allow these people or these teams or to contribute fully, to be able to be themselves? That's what the question should be. So instead of telling people to be more confident, we should, do things differently, make expectations very, very clear. Ambiguity really kills confidence. We know that, right? When you don't know what you're doing, it's very difficult to really present yourself or give an answer in a very confident way. we should also name strengths out loud, and telling people what are they good at. The more we tell people what are they good at, the more they believe it themselves, right? Especially for individuals that are not very good at putting their hand up and are there. And also, I think for me, this is really important. Create a safe place for colleagues to feel that they can fail while we hold their backs. That for me, that has been a really important thing throughout my career as I was growing, knowing that there is someone that trusts me, that if I fall, there is a safety net there for me. So I think doing those things, people can speak up their own opinions, and importantly, and very importantly, these opinions will be listened and valued as well. Because if we don't do that, all of a sudden that confidence erodes back again, right? And the last point probably, which I think it's important, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it later today, but is showing vulnerability. We should all share our own moments of doubts. So confidence isn't seen as evolving or innate, right? It's more practice. The more we practice, the better we get at it. So I think, confidence really grow when people feel seen, when people feel supported, trusted, and not when they are told to perform in a very specific certain way or not to do things. So I think for me, and to conclude, if there is one shift that I would like to encourage mentors and everybody else, is to stop asking, why aren't people confident, but what is the culture that we need to create in our working environments to encourage confidence levels to increase. And I think for me that this is where the real change begins, in that culture, in that creating that safe culture.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thanks, Sabrina. There's so much in there. I mean, the first thing I wrote down was the thing we see to a thing we enable. And I think that's what's really sticking with me. So I'm going to hold that point, and I'm going to move across to Sarah Beth to introduce yourself. And you're responding to reflecting on your understanding of confidence.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah Beth Riley. I'm the Service Manager for Commercial Development at Wigan Council, which doesn't mean very much, but I am an architect clienting in the public sector. And when I was reflecting on why I was invited to speak today, I wondered, am I confident? And for me, confidence is linked to knowing and trusting myself, which is why I think it hurts so much when people tell you to be more confident, because it is so personal and it's linked to where you are in your life at that moment. And I realize that my confidence hasn't been constant, but it's fluctuated over my lifetime, hopefully with a general trend upwards. So I wanted to talk you through some of the things which have given and taken away my confidence over time, and some practical tips on how I nourish and sustain my own confidence levels. So let's start at nursery. I was always told that I was really confident. She's very confident. That's something that I heard a lot. And this really developed a powerful internal voice for me, which I still very much lean on to this day. But going to architecture school, I think, was the biggest knock to my confidence in my entire life. I was distinctly average and didn't really have a clue what I was doing, so took a major hit at that point. But following that, I won an award. I won the Women in Property Regional Student Award, and I was exposed to the power of networking and a group of people that I'd never been introduced to before. I love networking, and I still do today. It gives me a lot of confidence. I owe a lot to my boss, Canny Ash from Ash Sacular. Not only did she push me to be more public and take more risks, but she also promoted me to associate at a fairly young age, which gave me a seat at a lot more tables and way more opportunities than I could have ever hoped to have had I not had that promotion. But next comes a knock to my confidence. I left Ash Secular and I took a role which paid exactly the same as Ash Secular, which you should never do. And it demoted my title as well. And within 6 months of joining this architecture practice, I left. My confidence had decreased so much that I left the architectural profession and I joined the public sector, where eventually I ended up leading an amazing design team at Be First, London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. And I worked with the most amazing people who challenged me and supported me to be the most confident that I think I have ever been. And now I'm a mum and I'm a whole different person, and I've had to reevaluate what confidence and self-trust means in my personal and my work life. So what's next? I'd say I'm definitely in a bit of a confidence lull right now. I relocated to the Northwest. I started a new role. I'm studying again. I'm building my network from scratch. But I know that I will get there with some of the tools that I have developed to stay confident, which are: it's always been very important for me to reflect and look for patterns in my life to ensure that I know myself and trust myself. So since I was 10 years old, I've kept a Dear Diary. And since 2019, I have kept what I call a career journal, which allows me to look back and be confident in the decisions that I am making, knowing that I'm building on years and years of experience. Secondly is to be uncomfortable and to take risks, and just know that everyone else is probably uncomfortable too. I've taken a bit of a risk today talking about something so personal with so many people, so let me know if it's paid off or not. And finally, as I was putting this conversation together, I realized how so many of the times when I felt the most confident in my life, I have been surrounded by amazing people. So finding my people who share my values and I can work really well with has been such a boost to my confidence. And just always keep on inching that bar higher and higher. Just keep remembering general trend upwards. You are not going to switch on confidence overnight. That's it from me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm sure that's so helpful, Sarah, to share so much of yourself, and follows on from Sabrina's sort of points around showing vulnerability. And it's funny because I remember you being at Ash Secular and Canny's support and pushing forward. And it's, yeah, I mean, she does that for a lot of people, and that sponsorship is so important. So that's great. Thank you. So we're going to move on to Oliver. Your camera's off, Ollie. Are you there?
I think I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm on my phone.
Right, okay.
When Taryn started recording, it's basically my camera and my mic won't turn on my laptop now, so sorry about that. But I'm here in profile. So yeah, I'm here to talk. I'd better introduce myself. I'm Oliver Lowry. I run. Justine Duggan can see me. Good. I can't see you, Justine, but thank you for letting me know. I run along with my business partner, Ackroyd Lowry Architects. We, if you haven't heard about us, we do some regen stuff in London, and we think we do quite good design. Taryn might disagree. Full disclosure, I live with Taryn. We are partners, and so there is some nepotism involved in me being on this panel. But she's picked me to be here for a particular reason, which I think is like a confidence hack. So what I like from the posting that's been going around this is like, it's no use telling me to be more confident. Tell me how to be more confident. And I feel like I've discovered this great hack, which is to make your online profile the starting point of, like, confidence is kind of a snowball. But you need to start with a little grain of snow. And I think your online presence, your personal brand, is a really good kernel to start that snowball off. And so and when I say personal brand, really, I mean LinkedIn. So that's what I wanted. Well, that's what Taryn, I think, has asked me to speak about today. But I think it's really true. I feel like imposter syndrome is a real thing. You know, I've been running this business for 11 years now. I still get it all the time. You know, like I had to go and see Historic England recently for one of our projects, and like, you know, it's intimidating. I've never been to the Historic England offices before. I've never presented to them before. You know, it's an unknown. And every time you get this bit of imposter syndrome, like, well, you know, why am I here? Jesus Christ. Like, but, you know, I feel like having a really good online profile, it helps you, you know, in Historic England is not a particularly good example, sorry, because I wouldn't necessarily go and add all those people to my LinkedIn, but like lots of other people, lots of clients and stuff where I might feel a bit intimidated. As soon as I add them on my LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, you know, my LinkedIn looks great because I've spent years trying to make it look great. So, and that gives me the confidence to be like, look, you know, however inadequate I might feel in any situation, you know, once I add them online, I know, oh, okay, look, my LinkedIn looks better than theirs. So that, you know, that's my hack. So now I'm going to speak about how, you know, like actionable things that you can do to make your online presence look better. And like, probably in 2 minutes won't get that far, but first off, you know, just focus on having information on your profile. A lot of people don't really fill it out. I was going to see if I can share mine. God knows if I can. No, I can't. So we'll just have to describe it. But you know, there's information about my role, and there's photos that look nice, and there's, you know, like I've asked people to give testimonials. You know, if you're not running a practice, then ask your boss to give you a testimonial, and then post. 1% of people on LinkedIn post. It's crazy. I try and post every day, which annoys Taryn insanely because I end up doing it at like 10 o'clock at night and like scheduling it for the next day. But once a day is a lot, but it means you'll be in the top 5% of all the people in the environment. If you just post once a week, you'll be in the top, you know, like 1% of, well, you're in the 1% of people that post. So post weekly, post about what you do. I got into this thing of just posting like data because that's a nice thing. I didn't really want to, like, LinkedIn's really easy. It works really well with one image infographic, and then which might, for me, I use data a lot, so it's super easy. You go on, you know, ChatGPT and you go look up the Molière stats on, you know, I want these to be real stats on house building numbers over the past 10 years, and then compare that to the cost of energy. And like ChatGPT can now do that, spits you out a graph. I then put that into Photoshop. You know, we've all got graphical skills, so we kind of know how to make stuff look good. And I'll be like, hey, look at this cool correlation. What do you think that means about house building? And those things, because they're quite interesting, people repost them. And what you're looking for with your online presence is repostability. You're trying to make things that people want to repost because they feel like it's an interesting topic to them, and by reposting it makes them look like they're engaging in the topic as well. And that's how you get virality. And what you're trying really to achieve is more followers. You know, the more followers you have, the more you're kind of winning the game. And for me, you know, having that sort of audience and stuff, not only does it give me confidence, it gives me opportunities, because you can kind of then feel like, I just feel like I can reach out to kind of journalists, or Chris Williamson was one of the people I kind of just reached out to. I was like, hey, let's have a chat. And because you feel like you've kind of got that profile looking like you've got an audience and stuff, then it tends to be the other person's like, yeah, cool, let's chat. So it opens doors, but most of all makes you feel confident. So I've actually got a little Taryn, am I allowed to promote the little thing that I built? I'm just promoting something that's free, that I've just built a little app on Lovable, which it's a personal brand barometer. I'm gonna have to remember what the website address is now. If anybody would like to use it, it's free. What's it called? Okay, www.
Ollie, just drop it in the chat.
I don't even know if I can. None of my technology is working. www.brandcompass.online, and it will give you, you put in your email address and your name, and it will do like a little search, and it will give you an where you are now of your personal brand, your online brand, or your online presence, profile. And then it will give you some tips, hints, and even some LinkedIn posts that you could potentially write. So everyone, get posting, get out there. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Ollie. I think it's a really important point that what you do online supports your sort of personal, in-person, project-based type presence, and you know, gives you more credibility, gives you more opportunity. I think that's really useful. Thank you for that. So Trisha.
Hello.
Over to you to introduce yourself and talk more about what kind of support actually builds confidence early on.
Hi, I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm Trisha Pradhan. I am a newly qualified architect working at Corsicana and Wright Architects. I was in the mentorship program last year and I enjoyed it so much that I came back as a mentee again this year. And I'm looking forward to sort of the group aspect of it. In terms of what builds confidence early on from my perspective, I'd say personally, I think the willingness of like mentors and colleagues and peers who genuinely want to help, not because they have to, but because they want you to do better. I think it's sort of the self-belief and confidence has always been a fluctuating thing. It's not something that comes naturally to me sometimes. And I think it's important to say that out loud. Like often in practice, it can kind of feel like everybody has it figured out and you're the only one still kind of trying to catch up. So I think when colleagues and peers and sort of senior roles are more willing to spend that time with you and explain things through with you and not sort of shame you in not knowing anything or not knowing something, and rather it being a failure, it's taken as feedback as what they can help with. I think something that I think Sarah touched on earlier about knowing yourself, I think that's something that is really good to know yourself and have sort of the self-worth to build that confidence, but sometimes it can lack. And I think I tend to look towards my peers and sort of earlier mentors, my parents, especially my mum, to sort of get that confidence and cheer me on. And I think in the workplace, it's a similar sort of idea. Self-belief is something I often borrow rather than have internally. But I think encouragement is a big thing, and I think I've sort of spoken with a few colleagues within my practice as well, like earlier on in their career, but also some who have had few experiences, and so the general consensus has been sort of encouragement and willingness to actually spend the time with you to explain things that you don't know. I think if I think back to moments when I was the most confident, it was probably only 2 times I can name. It is when I was like 4 or 5, when I wasn't sort of conditioned by shame and I didn't know what shame was. And probably during my part 2, which is odd to say because undergrad I didn't feel the same. I think part 2 I felt a bit more confident because of how my tutors were. They were always sort of willing to run through ideas. If there was something I didn't know, they would always come and sit down and explain it to me. Or during crits, they were really critical, but I think it was always encouragement always came first and then the critique came after. And I think that order kind of matters. If when tutors, especially in undergrad, tutors would just sort of go in with their critiques and there was no encouragement. But I think part 2 with how my tutors were, they would always say you're the only one who knows your project the best, so defend it. And if there's something that gets asked that you don't know, then it's more feedback of something to explore further. I think the whole shame aspect was something I explored as well in part 2, and I think shame is one of the quietest but most damaging influences on confidence in architecture, I'd say. I think knowing shame or understanding shame through that process helped me push through moments of doubt and not pretending to be confident, but by recognizing what was actually undermining it. I think also at university, again, this is the sort of the transition that I think I can't remember who mentioned, but transitioning between like the different transition points within the architecture industry is probably what also knocks a lot of confidence. And I think in uni, confidence comes more easily because there was permission to not know, to ask questions. But I think in practice, there's sort of this invisible pressure that doesn't really get talked about sometimes, to know what you're doing and just get on with it. I think encouragement creates safety. Safety allows learning, and then learning builds confidence from my perspective. I think permission often becomes less visible in sort of the practice context, and that sense of sort of expectation can quietly undermine confidence. I think imposter syndrome will always sort of be present in both uni and practice, but I think as long as sort of what you don't know isn't framed as failure, but is more framed as feedback, I think that's what's helpful the most. And I think something during my part 3 recently is also what came true, which is came to repeat itself, which is you're not expected to know everything, but you are expected to know how to respond. And I think saying I don't have the knowledge yet, but I'll look into it is sort of what it should be encouraged, rather than already knowing the things that you've been asked. I think so. As sort of a conclusion, I think what builds confidence early on is support that makes expectations clear and gives permission equally clear. Permission to ask questions, permission to still be learning. Mentors who encourage first, reduce shame, and explain the whys are the ones who have the biggest impact. I think I remember some ex-colleagues and some current colleagues as well who take the time to actually explain things to me, especially when I was doing a part 3 or on projects that I'd never on sectors I've never worked before. I think that's probably the most important thing earlier on in the career. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Tricia. I love the phrase about borrowing confidence. I think that's just brilliant. And finding sponsors, and you talked there about drawing on sort of early sponsors, your mum or whoever, but then finding those people in the workplace. And I think absolutely. And then where you finished off there with you're expected to know how to respond, so you don't have to have the knowledge or the answers. Of course you don't. But it's great if you've got some kind of response to sort of say, I'll go and find out or whatever. I think developing those kind of phrases is crucial, as you point out. And if anyone wants to read more about shame and vulnerability and doesn't already follow Brené Brown, then she's wonderful, and I'm sure there's lots of people who already do read.
She's the one I researched during my part 2. So that's where I learned about shame.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we probably need to join a few dots, and then we're going to take some questions and discussion from the chat. So if you haven't already added something to the chat, feel free. Now's your moment. Get those questions and thoughts into the chat there. Just to sort of summarize in some way what all of the speakers said there, because you were all brilliant and all talked obviously from quite different perspectives, but there were clearly some things which are coming from the mentor or leader point of view, which were around that, what do you need to do to enable the confidence in others? So things about time, the things about recognizing when there's a shift in somebody's role, that transition came across, the sponsoring and providing opportunities for people. And then there were things from the individual's point of view or the mentee point of view, which was about naming it, recognizing when there's less confident, knowing self and being aware, I heard, and finding those sponsors. And the last thing I heard there was the focus on learning, the importance of learning. You've got to start somewhere, start by starting. So, and there's a couple of questions that we've had in advance. So maybe we'll go to one of those while people are hopefully pouring to the chat as we speak. And one of those was, when does encouragement tip into pressure? I mean, Tricia, it would be quite interesting to hear from you. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if it's Because I think, I mean, certainly I've done that in the past. You try and encourage somebody, so you sort of want somebody to stretch, but you're trying to navigate, you know, when does that actually become quite pressurized?
I think from a personal perspective, I think it feels pressurized when, at least personally, I prefer to be pushed so that I can achieve my full potential. But I think when encouragement turns into pressure is when it feels like it's taking over your life, and that's all you can think about. And then if you don't get this one sort of this task done that you've been encouraged to do, then that's it. I think that's, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think it's probably more to do with how well you can handle the task that you've been given. And I think it's also probably comes from knowing what your limits are. If you don't know your limits, then the encouragement that you take on so easily or so positively may turn into pressure unknowingly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Sarah, did you have something to add there?
Yeah, just reflecting on my kind of presentation where I was coming from as well. I feel like both encouragement and pressure are external asks of you to become something else, something better, something more confident. Whereas I think my view on confidence has always been driven by a kind of internal desire to know myself and trust myself. And I think both encouragement and pressure for me kind of the same thing. It's an external ask of you, and I think until you make the decision to kind of go out there and do things or take it on your own back, I think what you need externally is more like support to support you through those decisions to develop your own confidence, rather than anybody kind of putting any pressure on you to be something you don't want to be or you're not ready to be.
Right, yeah, great, thank you. Sabrina?
Yeah, I'm on mute. Yeah, so I think I agree with Sarah. It's external, right? So I think it does feel pressure when it's unwelcomed. And so for me, it's about asking the other person, how does the other person like to develop, or if even likes to have any encouragement at all. So you will start with a question about how is best to work together, to approach, you know, how do we help you achieve your full potential? Do you actually want any help at all before that encouragement comes in?
Yeah, I think the asking questions generally of what people think is important, isn't it? Ollie, are you going to add? You're on mute. You're on mute, Ollie.
Sorry. Yes, I was raising my analog hand because my digital one is broken. Sabrina, question for you, based on that and what you said at the start in your kind of original presentation. You sort of mentioned, you know, we must be aware of the environment shaping, well, the environment as being the thing that kind of dictates how people are treated and therefore, you know, how that impacts their confidence. For those who are at, you know, maybe the start of their career, how would you give them advice about how they might change their environment to like improve their confidence? Because I'm interested in whether it's that, you know, would you suggest, if it's not working for them somewhere, where they move job, to change their environment, or, you know, what are kind of actionable ways that they could change their environment to improve the confidence they feel?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think sometimes you can't change your environment, right? But what you can do is you can request or make an opinion over the environment that you would like to be working on. And so voicing out what do you need to feel more confident, to feel that you can speak you can give your opinion. It's really important. So when you're starting your career, you're not able to change the environment. I think the responsibility of the environments that we create and the practices that we run, it's ours, and it's ours to do the right thing, but also it's our responsibility to ask the people that we work with, what is the environment that they like to have to be able to thrive?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a two-way, because what you might think that is a good environment, maybe the people that you're working with don't think is a good environment. And so there's always a two-way, and asking for feedback all the time. Is this working?
Yeah, I think asking for feedback is a important and tricky thing to navigate, isn't it, in all directions. Taryn, how are we doing in the chat? Is there anything we should bring in?
There's a few questions.
There's one that's really interesting around how there's this image of talent within architecture and people who are innately talented, and then by sort of the opposite of that, is that means that some people are untalented? How does that relate back to confidence? Is it what is this divide? So if I read the question out, let me just find it quickly. I think architecture has this idea that it's for people who are talented, and it can be hard when you're just starting out. And there's a disconnect between study and what the work environment is actually like. Isis says here, what has helped me most is accepting architecture is like any other job, and you can build knowledge and skill over time. But I think talking to that point about around talent and being sort of innately good at something that you're doing, we've all felt going into practice, going into studies. And so how does that affect confidence, and has that affected confidence over time? I think, Tricia, can we start with you, having recently come out of studies?
Yeah, I think in terms of the whole talent, and I think I've definitely strongly felt that since working in practice, sort of having this in a monologue of whether I do have the talent and what it takes to be in the profession. But I think I think it was Sarah that said we all operate differently, and I think it's important to know what your strengths are. And I think someone might be really good at sort of doing renders and really good models, but we all have different aspects within us that are good and that can sort of bring something different to the table. I think when I asked the question, what builds confidence within sort of my colleagues, I think one of my colleagues / friends said that it's important to shout out what your strengths are, so you don't feel inferior necessarily. So you know that you are good, but just at something different. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
That's great. Let's jump in.
Yeah, I just wondered if I could do a bit of a confidence boost for the whole room as somebody that was an architect and isn't anymore. Architects are insanely talented. The problem with the architecture profession is that you are all excellent. And if any of you left the profession, you would excel at loads of other things because the bar is just so incredibly high in architecture. And I think it's in Italy maybe where like architecture is the most sought after generalist degree subject, and architects go on to be all sorts of different career paths and professions. And I don't know if there's any Italians on the call, but maybe I'm making that up. But I just want to kind of give some confidence in this room that like in terms of other professions and where you work and people you might meet, even friends outside of architecture, you are going to be working one of the hardest and the most kind of passionate about your job. So just remember that when you're kind of comparing yourself to your colleagues. What do they say? Like comparison is the thief of joy or something. Don't compare yourselves. Like all architects are like top level.
Ali?
Going back to the question sort of about education and then practice, I agree with Sarah, what you said earlier, that the most like architecture school has a particularly unique talent for stripping away people's confidence, like completely. It's a terrible way to start careers. I honestly, you know, I think architecture school should be banned. We have apprentices here, they don't go to, well, they go to university 1 day a week, and it's we can build their confidence because we give them very clear goalposts to aim for. Like, I went to university and I was like, you don't study architecture before you get there, so you're like, you have no idea what it's going to be like. You don't get taught it at school, and then you're like, where are the hoops I'm trying to jump through? You know, all anybody wants is to know what the thing is they're trying to aim for, so they don't feel like an idiot for missing it. And I felt when I went to university, I had absolutely no idea what anybody wanted for me. I way preferred it in practice, because I was like, oh, you want me to just draw some toilet layouts for like 2 years? Cool, I can do that. I know how to do that. I've been to the toilet. So, and I actually think practice is better at developing people's confidence in university. University, get rid. It's not the best way. If people want to go to 3 years, you know, and go to university for the sake of going to university, great. Just don't study architecture. That's my controversial view of the day.
Nothing wrong with that. I'm conscious of time. There's a question, Taryn, that looks like it might be a suitable one to sort of round up on, from Tanya.
The one for all the panel members.
Yeah, that one.
In your experience, what are effective everyday rituals you find are helpful to manage stress or to prepare yourself to deal with difficult tasks?
I can start with that. Oh, sorry, Sarah, you go first.
Oh no, it's fine. I was going to do a really embarrassing one. I actually told my partner that I wasn't going to say this on this call, but I'm going to say it anyway. So before I ever do a talk or an interview or even just a difficult conversation at work, I do a power pose in the toilet. And that is not even a lie. I do that every single time.
So do I, Sarah, just so you can share the embarrassment with others. But it's well researched, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is.
I've said mine already, but if I'm going to meet somebody that I'm intimidated by, I add them on LinkedIn before I go so they can see how many followers I've got. Works for me.
That's a good one. Credibility.
I will be much more conservative. I will say prepare. You see all of these people talking in public, standing on stages all the time, looking effortless, right? That like they just what do you think they're just standing up there without having done anything? No, they don't. They know it by heart. They prepare. So when you have something challenging that is outside of your comfort zone, prepare. Prepare your answers, practice, speak out loud, and practice again, and video yourself. And so that will give you confidence. It's like when you are, my son is at secondary school, starting secondary school, and really, really struggling and going to these exams and not doing great. And so have you done anything about it? No. Well, how about you study a little bit and prepare, and then you're going to feel better. Right, so it's like back at school. Prepare, and you're going to do great. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think preparation. Trisha, did you have anything to add?
Well, I was going to say all of the above. I definitely I don't do it in the toilet maybe, but I do it sort of internally, the sort of Superman pose that people talk about. And I definitely do prepare. I definitely prepared for this talk because I was really nervous. But I think what I wanted to add was when I do prepare, I think I always sort of prepare with someone who I know is going to be on my side and like encourage me on. So I think that's important to do, because I feel like the nerves for me comes from, oh, what if they don't want to hear what I have to say? But if you practice with someone who does want to hear what you have to say, then it will give you that extra boost of confidence. And that's what I did yesterday.
Okay, thank you. I've just shared a couple of resources there on power poses, poses for what that actually does, a book called Physical Intelligence, which sort of explains what's going on chemically when you do that. Right, I'm now really conscious of time, Taryn. Do you want to go to one final question?
Yes, so I think one that probably goes across the whole industry. We've been asked, how you recommend building confidence in a networking environment? And I know that that's something that we start looking at when we look at career progression and moving to next steps in our career. We want to be doing business development, winning work, those sorts of things. How do you build your confidence in those environments, especially for people that aren't necessarily extrovert?
Can I go on, because
Yes.
I'm, and this maybe won't apply to everyone, but like I absolutely hate those things. And like, whilst I might outwardly seem confident, I cannot stand going to those events and having to, like, when you see a cluster of like 3 people together and some people just go, oh, hey, can I join this conversation? And I just can't make myself do it. I hate it. I'm way rather do something where people want to come to me. And so I don't go to like movers and shakers. I don't go to, I go to Mifflin, but like I'll put my own thing on, because I want the thing that I want people to come to me. I don't want to go up to them and like prod and poke. So give value. That's what I think. And this is why I say I don't think it necessarily is advice that works for everybody at every stage in their career. But like, if you are, pretend you're the host. Yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Just put that in the chat. But that is it. Like, give value and then make people come to you rather than you going to them is generally how we approach our networking strategy. So like, again, this won't apply, but if you run a business, like we will try and get people that to speak at events who I know that people will want to come and see, so that I don't have to go out and prod people and like make them come to my thing, or I have to go up to them. Like they come because I've given them a magnet, and that's, always using magnets to make people come to us means that you don't have to worry about confidence. They want to be there anyway.
Yeah.
Can I go next?
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
I love networking. I think I'd say that I'm an introvert, but I do really love networking. And the way that I always approach it is that I go to make friends. I don't go like with having it in my mind to win work or get a new job or land speaking opportunities or whatever it is. The main priority for me in networking is building rapport. So often I won't even talk about work. I'll talk about holidays and family and what people like to do in their free time. And I think for me, that's just paid dividends. It's the long game for sure. But what you really want is that people remember you and they think, oh, Sarah Beth, like she does that thing. I'm going to reach out to her like in the future when they need something. I think I always try to play the long game and make new friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I think stopping calling it networking is quite helpful, isn't it? Anything, Sabrina or Trisha, to add?
Well, I think just think about it like exactly like it's like you're going to a party, right? It's a way of socializing, and I think there's a very good someone comment on the chat buddy up. Great, absolutely, go with someone, right? That's and the more you do it, the easier it gets. But just go to have fun and meet some new people, and then you will see that there is loads of others, most that are in exactly the same situation as you are.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I think it's important to remember that everybody at these events are sort of in the same shoes, where if you've come with a buddy, great, but if you've come alone, then there's going to be loads of other people who come alone who are going to be thinking the same things as, what do I ask? What do I say? How do I get into this conversation? But I think the buddy thing is probably a good advice to take with if you're feeling nervous about going into sort of networking events. I like networking events. I like talking to people. I think I do sort of treat it as how Sarah Beth treats it, as like somewhere to just make connections rather than it being to network for work necessarily.
Second controversial opinion of the day. I don't think anyone wins any business at networking events. So part of your BD strategy, you're probably doing it wrong. You know, like other than UK Reefer Miffing, I would make an exception. But again, you have to make sure you're doing things within those events. If you just went to them, like think about your BD more creatively than networking events. If you just go and assume that you're going to win work through that, I can assure that it doesn't work. But you know, that's why online's so powerful. All connections online are really easy, and you can you can cultivate the connection online, have a really good LinkedIn profile, and then invite the person to lunch. You're way more likely to spend time. You're way more likely to come out of that lunch knowing all about their business and their company than you are meeting them at a networking event where you might get 2 minutes. You know, get them from LinkedIn into the office or have a coffee, go to a cafe with them, you know, cost you 12 quid and you've spent half an hour with them. It's so much better than going to a networking event.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to sort of wrap up by saying thank you very much to our panel who have been brilliant. Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to watching back the recording actually. And thank you to Taryn and Eleni and the whole of the rest of the Women in Architecture crew who have pulled together masses of people in an audience and such a great panel. So thank you for that, and thanks for everyone for joining and all your contributions on the chat. I can see people replying to each other, so that's obviously very helpful. And I guess we'll roll right back to the start where we suggested that it would be good if everyone went away with some kind of reflection, something that they picked up from all of the conversations today on how they might build somebody else's confidence. So as a mentor or colleague, how would you build somebody else's confidence, and what might you do to build your own? And take that away. But it'd be great if we got one action from everybody who's on the call today. And I guess the final word is please stop telling people that they need to be more confident. And that's it from us, I think. Anything further to say, Taryn, before we wrap up?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, Rachel, for chairing. That went so well and so smoothly. And thank you to the panel for all of your wonderful advice and insights and vulnerability that you shared with us today. I'd say to answer a few of the networking related questions, I think giving Women in Architecture's website a little visit. We do quite a lot of networking opportunities. We do second Thursdays where we informally meet just to have little discussions, and as Sabrina says, just practice, you know, getting to know new people, getting to know strangers, walking into a room where you don't know anyone. We're trying to create safe spaces for that. So give us a little look if you haven't already. And otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for your time.